Thank you very much, Jeremy. We've got some very exciting news to reveal today. It has to do with the world-famous Roswell UFO crash of 1947. That's almost 60 years ago that crash took place. There's a new document that's come out. It's actually an affidavit from a guy by the name of Walter Haut. That's H-A-U-T. Walter Haut was the first lieutenant assigned to the Roswell Army airfield in 1947 in July. He describes in this affidavit, he passed away a number of years ago, he describes a flying saucer, the bodies of small humanoids, metal that had never been seen before, and a very elaborate plan by the U.S. Air Force, by officials there, to cover up arguably the most important event in world history. Walter Haut died, incidentally, at the age of 84 in the year 2006. He was a base public relations officer, and any of you who have seen any of these countless documentaries on Roswell have seen his face, because he was the guy who was asked by General Vaeni to release the news, which then became world news, that a flying saucer had been captured by the Army Air Force in Roswell. The next day, he was called upon to release a subsequent story denying that it was a flying saucer, but in fact that it was a weather balloon. All of these years, and William Burns, the publisher of UFO Magazine, will elaborate on this, has interviewed Walter Haut any number of times before his death. Walter Haut did not reveal any of this. This is a total about-face, and I would say the single most important piece of evidence, and I think Bill would agree on this, in all of these years that has come forward regarding the Roswell case. There is no answering this. They may try to paint Walter Haut, and I never knew the gentleman myself, as who knows what, as a drunk, or who knows what they might say. But there's no explaining this away. The cat is out of the bag. Now, these beings, incidentally, were about 4 foot tall. What's interesting is that there wasn't only one crash site, but apparently 2 crash sites, and presumably, therefore, 2 spacecraft that went down in July 1947. Walter Haut's daughter opened the sealed affidavit. The affidavit itself is dated December 26, 2002. Now, I'm going to turn this over at this point to Bill. And then, well, actually, before I do, I just want to mention something else that's worthwhile mentioning. What I'm about to mention, I will say up front, is third-hand evidence, so therefore I will not give it the same degree of importance at all. But it's still worth noting, I would say. There is an outside possibility that the Roswell spacecraft might have been shot down by the U.S. Air Force. And that this is according to Boyd Bushman, who is presently, he lives in Texas. He's presently a consultant to Lockheed Martin. He has a long and distinguished career in the aerospace field. His friend, he says that in an interview, and incidentally, this DVD that just came out, called From Here to Andromeda, he talks about a doctor friend of his, presumably somebody who lives in Texas, who told him this story that he knew an Air Force pilot who, on orders from the Air Force, had shot down the Roswell UFO. He further claimed that this man, this pilot, had seen the UFO on the ground and looked in it, and which was easy to do because it was the craft was translucent, and saw 3 bodies of humanoid figures, and additionally that there was one other figure that apparently was lying on a stretcher that appeared to be dying. He has worked, incidentally, he's a former program manager for Lockheed Martin. He's worked in he's had top secret clearance. He's also worked for Hughes Aircraft. I'm going to turn it over now to Bill Burns, the publisher of UFO Magazine.
Hi. I was going to begin one way, but after hearing Jeremy's story, it reminded me of another story. We have a writer at UFO Magazine years back who wrote a book called Flying Saucers 101. And this gentleman used to wear, when he was a salesman, and he would travel around the country selling pharmaceuticals, still does. And he had a shirt that he would wear on the plane, UFO Magazine, Flying Saucers 101, and the 800 number to UFO Magazine on the back of the shirt. And he told me that on every single flight he took, somebody would say to him, you know, I've had contact with an extraterrestrial. Not always I've been abducted by an extraterrestrial, but I've had contact. And Hal would say, well, what do you mean contact? And he'd say, well, you know, I saw this thing. It was in my room. I saw this light. I saw this flying saucer, and I felt a presence of something that was outside my body but suddenly was communicating with me. And I said, well, who would tell you this? Thinking they were flakes, they were nuts, they were holding up a placard on the street, whatever. And he said to me, regular people, men and women. In 2 cases, there were pilots who said that to me. And one said he'd had contact in the cockpit of whatever he was flying, a 737 or a 747, whatever plane it was, I forget. But the point was, that's how prevalent this is. So we were all in this room talking about the culture, but there's a whole reality out there that I would say countless people experience that's always under the rug, that nobody is allowed to talk about, because when you do, you are characterized as just kind of a nutcase, delusional, hallucinatory. Not to say that there aren't people out there who are hallucinatory and delusional, but there is a group of people, a cadre of individuals who really have had contact. And I think the idea of some kind of a getting together, a gathering, so to speak, of people looking at the culture, looking at the movies. We're going to talk about the movies on Friday night that we're going to see. Invaders from Mars, a stunning movie about the baby boomers coming of age, all that stuff. It's great, but there's this group of people who've had this contact. I want to pick up on what Michael said.